Hello everyone! Looks like we're gonna get some one-on-one time for the first time. How exciting. Jason here, gonna talk about the deck that I played in our Modern Horizons 3 episode of Upkeep. I played Cayth, famed Mechanist in that deck. That's the backup commander to the Creative Energy Precon deck. I just felt that Cayth was gonna be a more interesting build around. So what Cayth is she is a 3/3 Dwarf Artificer for 1 and jeskai, and she has Fabricate 1, which is whenever she enters, either put a +1/+1 counter on her or create a servo token. And then it says other non-token creatures you control have Fabricate 1. So any non-token creature that I have is going to either enter with a +1/+1 counter or a servo. And then it says pay 2, tap, choose 1, Populate or Proliferate. When I saw this card, I was like, this is doing a lot. First of all, it's going to be doing a lot of things on its own just with the Fabricate 1. There's a lot of ways that you can abuse that. But then giving all my other non-token creatures Fabricate 1 as well, too good to pass up. So what I wanted to do with this deck was I really wanted to focus on all the things that Cayth wants to do. I want to be putting +1/+1 counters on things. I want to be populating all the tokens that I'm going to be making. And then I wanted to do a little bit of degenerate stuff. So first, with the +1/+1 counters theme, I'm going to have cards in here like Angel of Invention, 2/1 Flying Vigilance Lifelink with Fabricate 2. So it's going to have Fabricate 2, and then it'll also have Fabricate 1 from my commander. So it's either going to enter with 2 +1/+1 counters, and then 2 servos, and then get an additional +1/+1 counter, or another servo. But then it says other creatures I control get +1/+1. So all the tokens that I'm going to be making, they're going to get bigger with this on the board. I have some other Anthem type of effects, like I have Knowledge is Power. That's creatures you control get +X, where X is the number of cards you've drawn this turn. So, I want to be making sure that I'm drawing cards, which I have some other stuff in here that'll help me draw to get the power boost on my creatures. Then I have cards like Sigardus Summons. So this is a really cool enchantment that says creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have base power and toughness 4/4, have flying, and are angels in addition to their other types. So now, my servos, they're going to be 5/5 angels, because they're going to be 4/4s with +1/+1 counters on them, because that's kind of one of the things that I'm trying to do here. And so instead of making these really weak small bodies, they're going to be pretty decently sized, and they're going to have some type of evasion in the form of flying. That was part of the things that I wanted to do. But then, I also really wanted to play into the Fabricate part of it. An interesting thing with Fabricate, if a creature with Persist gets Fabricate 1, they can essentially be sacrificed and brought back to the battlefield an infinite amount of times, because the -1/-1 counter they're going to get from the Persist is going to get balanced out by the +1/+1 counter they're going to get from the Fabricate 1. I really wanted to play around with that. Now, there's not a whole lot of Persist creatures that I could go with just for these colors. So a big part of this deck is the card Cauldron of Souls. That's where I can tap in and choose any number of creatures that I want, either my creatures or my opponent's creatures. Really, I'm going to be choosing my creatures. And each of those creatures are going to gain Persist until end of turn. And then I'll utilize cards like Goblin Bombardment to sacrifice these Persist creatures and deal damage to my opponents. Now, with any Persist creature on the battlefield, if you haven't figured it out already, that's an infinite combo. With Cayth and Goblin Bombardment, I can just sacrifice a creature that already has Persist over and over again and just deal as much damage as I need to any of my opponents or creatures that they have. So that was one of the things that I was playing into, but also because I'm going to be utilizing that Persist and the Fabricate 1 to keep my creatures coming back, I have a fair amount of enter the battlefield effects. So I'll run cards like Shrieking Drake and White Orchid Phantom. So Shrieking Drake says whenever it enters, return a creature I control to its owner's hand. So if I have that on the battlefield and I need to save my commander or another creature, I sacrifice this after giving it Persist with the Cauldron of Souls, and then it comes back from the Persist, and I can return a creature to my hand and save it from utter doom. And then White Orchid Phantom, that's a good way for me to repeatedly destroy my opponent's non-basic lands that are getting out of hand. It's a little bit degeneracy there, but hey, we talk about on this channel land destruction is important. I also have cards like Whirlpool Warrior and Glenalendra Archmage. So Glenalendra Archmage already has Persist on it. This is something I could use with the Goblin Bombardment and do the combo that way if I wanted to. But Glenalendra is basically going to give me consistent counter spells to my opponent's non-creature spells, because it has Persist, and I'll pay the blue, sacrifice it, it'll come back, but then I'll use the Fabricate one to give it the +1/+1 counter. So I basically have as many non-creature counters as I want, as long as I have the mana and as long as Tundra doesn't get destroyed. Then one of the stronger cards in the deck, I think, is Sentinel Sarah Lyons. It's a 4/4 human knight with haste for 3 and Boros. Has haste, and it says as long as an artifact entered the battlefield under your control this turn, creatures you control get +2/+2. And then it says whenever Sentinel Sarah Lyons and at least 2 other creatures attack, she deals damage equal to the number of artifacts you control to target player. So in that sense, it kind of becomes a sub-artifact theme, because I'm going to be making a lot of artifact servos. I have a decent number of artifacts in the deck, so hopefully when that goes off, Sarah Lyons is going to be dealing a lot of damage to my opponents. Also, there's a sub-energy counters theme. This deck is doing a lot of stuff. So it's doing stuff with, tokens. It's doing stuff with counters, the Persist thing. And then I have an energy sub-theme in there just because there's a decent amount of cards that will give me energy when they enter the battlefield or when I cast them or what have you. And then I can get some payoffs for the energies as well. So I have cards like Sentry Bot, where I could flash it in, and it costs 1 less for each creature that is attacking me, and it's going to enter and give me an energy counter for each creature that is attacking me. Now I can pay energy at the beginning of combat to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature I control. If I have enough energy, I'll do that, but really I want to save those energy counters for cards like Royal Cartographer, where I pay 6 energy and I can draw 3 cards. That's going to help keep me with the card advantage and stay ahead of my opponents. But then I also have cards like Riddlegate Gargoyle, where it enters the battlefield and I'm going to get 3 energy counters. That's another thing that I can abuse with the giving it Persist and Fabricate 1, having it come back and give me energy counters as often as I need it to. And then it says whenever you attack, you may pay 2 energy. When you do, target creature you control gains lifelink until end of turn. So that's just going to be another way for me to gain life and keep myself from dying in certain situations. And then I have Conduit Goblin. When it enters the battlefield, it gets me 2 energy counters, and at the beginning of combat I may pay 1 energy, and if I do, another target creature gets +1/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. That's a really cool card, because if I get Cayth onto the battlefield and I have this out, I can pay the energy to give Cayth haste, and then, maybe not attack with her, but now I can use her Proliferate or her Populate ability to make more tokens or to get more counters on things. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the fact that if I did populate, I would be making a bunch of really small, wimpy, weak creatures, and I'm populating those, so maybe we could throw some bigger tokens into that. So I have cards like Soul of Eternity. It's not going to enter as a token or anything, but when it's in my graveyard, I can encore it out and then make tokens for each opponent that I'm attacking. And then before they get sacked at the end step, I will just make a copy of one of those. That way I get to keep that around, and now I have this huge beater. I also have cards like Ulamog's Dreadsire, which is a 10/10 for 10 with Vigilance. It has ward, sacrifice a permanent with mana value 1 or greater, and I can tap it to make a 10/10. So I can just populate that 10/10, keep making 10/10s over and over again. And then, for the tokens, I also have cards like Osier Tack, Deepest Foundation. So whenever I'm making a token, I'm going to make triple that many tokens. So Osier Tack is going to be one of the better cards in the deck when it comes to the token generation. So there's 2 other cards that I wanted to talk about to round off this deck tech. The first one is going to be Urza, Lord High Artificer. Since I'm going to be making a lot of artifact tokens with the servos, that's just going to give me access to a lot of mana if I get Urza out onto the battlefield. Not to mention, Urza's going to enter, make a construct that's going to get bigger for each artifact I control. So that's going to be a huge benefit, and that's another token that I'm going to be able to populate with my commander. So I'll be able to make an army of constructs that are huge. And then, if all else fails and I don't get my Gamma Bombardment Persist combo to go off, or I'm not really having luck swinging in with my creatures or anything like that, I run Mechanized Production, which is an enchantment aura, and it says enchant artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. So I can I can attach this to one of my servos. I've already made a bunch of servos, so it's very likely that at my next upkeep I would win as long as this remains on the battlefield. Or I can put it onto the token that I'm going to be making from Urza And now I'm just making a bunch of constructs over and over again, getting this huge army while trying to build my way up to that 8 so I win. But even if I don't, I have enough creatures on the battlefield that's going to help protect me and deal some damage to my opponent so I can slowly work towards that win. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. If you haven't seen the Modern Horizons 3 episode, go check it out and stay tuned for more Magic the Gathering content.